The Unspoken, a stepbrother's descent into forbidden desire. Jake, that was my name. A common enough moniker for a guy in his early 20s, freshly graduated from college with a head full of dreams and a heart full of the reckless bravado that comes from youth and inexperience. But life, as I was about to learn, had a knack for upending even the most carefully laid plans, for throwing a curveball right when you are trying to find your footing. So, here I was, back in my childhood home, a perfectly normal suburban house, with beige walls that could easily hide 1,000 secrets. Not mine, but of the two people who were already residing there. The same walls that were now becoming my cage, my safe house, a place I had only meant to visit for a short time to save a little money. My dad, Mike, was an enigma, a man of few words who'd always seemed more comfortable with the silence of his workshop than with his own son. He remarried while I was away, and when I had moved back, she was there, in her rightful place by his side, or so it seemed, Karen. The name itself felt like a forbidden whisper, an echo of a desire I was trying desperately to deny. She was 60, a number that carried the weight of years, a woman who possessed an aura of serene confidence and a laugh that had the power to fill the void in our house. It seemed that the passing of my mom left a hole that only she could fill. She wasn't what I expected of a stepmother, a woman who is stern and critical. She was anything but that. She was everything my mind and body found forbidden. She was like a vintage classic, one that was meant to be enjoyed and admired. She radiated a magnetism that was both captivating and unnerving. And she was now living in my house. My body felt a strange reaction every time we would pass each other. It was intoxicating and illicit. I felt like I was spiraling, no control over my thoughts or my heart. That fateful Tuesday morning, I was in the bathroom, going through the motions of getting ready for an interview, an event that was now nothing more than a background noise to the new and intense sensations that were beginning to take over my body and soul. The shower was running, the steam creating a veil of mystery as I stared into the fogged-up mirror, practicing my answers in a low voice, trying to regain my focus. And then came the knock on the door, her voice as soft as it was clear as she called my name, her voice sending a shiver straight down my spine. "Hey Jake, are you in there?" she would ask. My body would react as if struck by lightning. I tried to act casual. "Yeah, Karen, just getting ready for my interview," I had answered, praying she would not see that my hands were shaking, that my voice was trembling. The door opened just slightly. She said she only needed to grab something, and then her robe, that light blue fabric that seemed to caress her figure, came undone, just enough to reveal a glimpse of her bare shoulder and the soft curve of her collarbone. It was a moment suspended in time, a stolen glance that ignited a wildfire in my soul, awakening desires that I didn't know I possessed. I looked away quickly, a hot blush spreading over my cheeks, the sudden realization of what I had seen, how it had made me feel, overwhelming my senses, and I knew that there was no going back. In the aftermath of that moment, the house became a different place, transformed into a landscape of unspoken tension. Our every interaction was now coded with a new meaning. Each shared glance had a new context, a silent conversation that was only between us. Her simple smile became a challenge, a silent tease, and the sound of her voice sent shivers down my spine, awakening desires that felt both dangerous and forbidden. The way she moved around the house was nothing more than a seductive dance. She seemed to know what she was doing, and I was no more than a player in her game. I found myself drawn to her, the thrill of the forbidden an irresistible call. I started to search for opportunities to be near her, to brush up against her, desperate for any kind of connection. My mind started to create scenarios of what could be, what could happen, and my thoughts began to stray further and further away from what was real, towards her, towards that desire. My body, mind, and soul wanted her. I created a new playground, a place where I could watch her without any kind of boundaries. The social media profile I had made was now my secret window into her world, and it was also a place where I could explore the strange mix of feelings that I had come to have for her. Every update, every photograph, became a new piece of a seductive puzzle, a roadmap leading me deeper into the labyrinth of my forbidden desires. I became a voyeur, a silent stalker of her digital life, imagining the endless possibilities, and then letting my imagination create something so explicit and so enticing that I found that I couldn't function without her, or some version of her, filling my mind. Each message, every word she wrote, became a potential invitation, each comment a coded signal that only I could decode. My carefully orchestrated days became a performance, every movement designed to capture Karen's attention, every glance from her a reward that sent shivers through my body. I started frequenting the kitchen more, hoping to catch her there, our bodies brushing as we reached for a cup or the same ingredient. I found myself staying in the living room much longer than was necessary, hoping for another stolen glance, a knowing look that promised more. Roz, who had known me since childhood, began to notice my change, her gaze growing sharper and more concerned with each passing day. But her words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the intense desire that was taking over my being. I was now completely lost in my fantasy, a world where Karen was the center, and I was only ever circling her. Then, with the casual mention of a man, she had mentioned her best friend, and I was done. All pretense fell away, and I became cold and calculated. I needed to make her mine. The jealousy was toxic and consumed my every thought. It was like an invisible poison that was slowly eroding my sense of reality. My carefully built fantasies, and all the time and effort I'd poured into them came crashing down around me like a collapsing building. The age difference between us, a silent barrier I had ignored, now loomed as a stark reminder of the impossibility of my desires. Each smile, each glance, now felt like betrayal, a reminder of her relationship with another, with my own father. It was a brutal slap in the face, an icy blast that made me question everything that I had believed in. And from that dark place came the urge to strike back, to make things even, to take control of what I believed was mine, and to finally have her. I decided to use the weapon I had acquired for her, her profile. Hiding behind a veil of anonymity, I crafted messages laced with jealousy and venomous intent, hoping that their relationship, one that I wasn't a part of, would come crashing down around them. It was a terrible thing to do, and yet I was propelled by this dark and terrifying power. The days that followed were an exercise in strained normalcy, a performance where both of us were aware of the game we were playing. I found myself constantly seeking Karen's gaze, her presence both a torment and a forbidden pleasure. We'd have short conversations that ended abruptly, always careful not to cross a line that could destroy what we were building. It was a dangerous game, and we were both dancing on the edge. The need was a persistent ache, a longing that was both exhilarating and heartbreaking. It was no longer enough to just dream. I needed her, and I craved the taste of her lips, the feel of her body. My next, and perhaps last, act of reckless abandon was during Thanksgiving. As her house was filled with people, I was focused only on her, and every touch and smile that wasn't directed at me became another burn, another sting that propelled me closer to the edge. Then, as she pulled away to tend to something, I followed her, my heart thumping like a drum against my ribs, and found myself in a secret location with her. It was there, in the heat of the moment, that everything fell apart. I confessed. I told her of the passion that I felt for her, laying myself bare for the woman that I wanted, and the woman that would never be mine. And in return, I got what I had coming for me. Not acceptance, but rejection. John said that I had misinterpreted everything, that he was never going to love me. He then called me out for the messages, and it was all too much. Everything I thought I knew about our connection evaporated. In that moment, I saw myself as the pathetic soul that I was, lost in a fantasy that had no roots in reality. She had been right all along. My desires were nothing more than a desperate plea for attention. Crushed by the weight of her rejection, I decided that it was time to take back my life. I needed to put an end to this game. I resigned from my position at the office, hoping to sever every tie with John. The act was symbolic, a necessary step in my journey towards self-respect. And that's when I found it. His pencil. My heart would stop. It was a reminder of what I did, of who I had tried to be, and a sign that all wasn't over. Driven by this mixture of pain and a desperate hope, I was pulled back into the world of my social media persona. A dangerous, almost foolish act of defiance, where I posted messages that came straight from the heart, and they were as raw and naked as the emotions I felt. I wanted John to know the pain he had caused me, to understand the dark places my desire had taken me, to feel, if not the same intensity at least, an echo of it. But in the end, I realized I was only hurting myself, and there was never a true connection with him. I was no more than a shadow in his world, and that was never going to change. On my last day, a surreal sense of calm descended upon me as I walked away from a life that had been carefully constructed around him. I was finally going back to my own life, my own dreams. It was like a new beginning. As the elevator doors began to close, I found myself imagining one last scene, one where John, finally succumbing to the desire he had tried to deny, chased after me. His confession of feelings as grand and passionate as any I had ever imagined. He takes me in his arms, his lips finding mine, our bodies a perfect fit, a moment that had always been mine, and I was finally going to experience. It was the culmination of all my dreams, the resolution I had longed for, but as the doors sealed me away, I wondered if this was real, or if this would always be just a fantasy. And so, Doris's descent became more than just a story about a forbidden desire. It became a journey into the heart of longing, a study of a woman wrestling with the dark side of obsession and the bittersweet dance of self-discovery. It was a testament to the power of the human heart, and even when broken, can find the strength to forge a new path. I now had my freedom and my story. What would I do next? That was the new question. I hope this expanded and evocative version captures the essence of what you were aiming for. The focus is on heightened emotions, sensual language, and a narrative structure that keeps the audience engaged. Do let me know if T here is anything else you would like me to refine or adjust.